Hello everybody and welcome once again to the ESL UK Premiership. My name is Munchables and joining me once again is going to be Andy Verius Day, and we're here for our second best of three of the day. It's going to be FM up against Choke Gaming, and honestly this has got to be a pretty epic series to be able to live up to our first best of three.
Yeah, who would have thought that the Null would actually come out ahead of XL Esports? Somewhat of an upset, but they've come in with the goal of saying, we want to hold our spot in the Premiership. We're going to do that by getting the best seeding that we can coming into the promotion relegation tournament, and they're doing a good job so far. Yeah, they lost against Choke, but you know, they've come back strong and they're looking to take that top spot. But moving past that game, we're going to now be looking at a competition between the top four teams. Both these guys playing for the best scene they can coming into the playoffs. FM versus Choke. These guys have both been around for a very long time. Both been sitting around the top of the both been sitting around the top of the UK scene for a very long time. And now it's going to be a matter of which team can come out ahead in this best of three series. I think it should be an exciting one, but I think we're going to see a lot of interesting picks.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you mentioned these two teams have been around the scene for a long time, and so have some of these players that are in this matchup. We've got Toaster123, we've got Tundra, we've got Numlocked, we've got Nocturnal Plex, Haddo. So many players that have been around the UK scene for so long, and it always feels like that when you get to these top teams. When you see FM, Choke, Exertus, and Infused, those are the teams that generally have the sort of veteran players that have been with an organisation for a long time. And obviously, FM have drafted in Flaxish. We've seen him play a couple of times, and honestly, Flaxish, a lot of you will have heard of Flaxish before. Relatively well-renowned within Europe as a challenger player. He's been kind of hit and miss so far within the Premiership.
Yeah, especially seeing as he's played XL quite a few times, and he's struggled against Billy. And I don't think he's going to have a much easier of a time going up against Numlocked, who's considered another one of the carry top laners that we do have available in the UK. This guy coming back to the UK scene from the Turkish LCS, and he's brought with him Raveno, the mid laner that he used to play with. Both these guys looking to try and set their name up in the UK scene and trying to secure themselves first place in the ESL UK Premiership. Some other people that have recently been introduced to the lineup. They now have Nocturnal Plex as their full-time jungler. Last week we saw him have a dominant performance on that Kindred. We've already seen a lot of Kindred today. We should be seeing quite a lot more of it, and as I say that, it's banned out, so completely ignore me. And I'm looking forward to seeing how well Jokerism does as well. He's moved away from XL Esports, breached into the top four teams, and he's looking to prove himself. And what better way to prove yourself than going up against another one of the top UK teams, and more to the point, going up against arguably the best AD carry in the UK, Toaster123. This guy is pretty good.
Yeah, he certainly is. Had a bit of a taste of the challenger scene recently as well on the lineup of Ex Nihilo, and he is back onto FM Esports. And I mean, he's one of the players that has been on quite a few teams. And I mean, last weekend I was talking about how Nocturnal Plex, I'm not sure there's a team he hasn't been on. Toaster has been on quite a few different lineups as well, and first lock-in of the game is going to be that Lulu. We've seen a lot of Lulu throughout the Premiership and just throughout competitive League of Legends within the last few months. Incredibly strong pick, and as well can be flexed top mid support, or pretty much wherever you want to put it.
Yeah, it's a very flex pick, fantastic for any sort of composition that you want to run. You could turn it into a protect the AD carry composition. You could bring a carry top laner out from the top lane, which is something that Flaxish likes to do. Something that we've regularly seen banned away from him is this Fiora, which is now available. It works very well in combination with a Lulu. And yeah, just a very well-rounded, very strong pick. Still very relevant in the current meta. Interesting to see whether or not that changes coming into Season 6, but I won't concentrate too much on that. Meanwhile, for the side of Choke, they've responded with a Renekton and a Gragas pick very early on. Now, Gragas is, I want to say a comfort pick for Plex, but I don't think there's a jungler that Plex isn't comfortable on. This guy learns a jungle champion and he masters it in about a week. Very competent, very smart jungler, but sometimes he can get a little bit too cocky. Sometimes he can make too aggressive plays, thinks he's a little bit stronger than he actually is, and can end up getting punished for it. So With this Gragas pick, it's a little bit harder to punish your mistakes because of the amount of mobility and disengage that he has available to him, but still very strong jungler, very well rounded, also works in a number of different compositions, so looking forward to seeing how well they make this one work out. But the Renekton confuses me a little bit. I'm surprised to see it come out so early from Numlocked. I guess what he's doing is by saying, I've picked this Renekton, if you want to pick Fiora or Darius into me, I'm absolutely fine with that. And because of how dominant Renekton is in the current meta, especially against some of these more recent Juggernaut champions that we've seen more recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are going to see the Rek'Sai locked in for Kino combo. Rek'Sai pretty much a staple jungler for the vast majority of jungle players, and Kino is a player that is going to be very proficient on that champion. We've seen him play it a lot of times and seen him play on a lot of different rosters as well. Sivir Morgana locked in here though for Choke Gaming. I nearly said XL because it's Jokerism. Obviously, their old AD carry. All of these players seem to just be like swapped around the UK scene. But Ravano locking in that Morgana. Would expect that one to go down to the Haddo in the support position. And against Alistar. Alistar, a champion that we've seen a little bit less of recently in the meta.
Yeah, he's still very strong though, can work in a number of different ways. More importantly, what he provides is a great frontline for your team, as well as a hard engage. And considering how familiar Tundra... Well, speaking of Tundra, he is quite new to the support role. Traditionally, we've seen him on this Tahm Kench and Thresh quite a lot. In some other tournaments that I've seen him playing in, he's made Kennen work quite well for him, as well as Shen, which we thought was quite funny because he's been bringing top laners down to the support role and making them work out pretty well for him. And Alistar, I suppose you could stretch that one, but still very good for setting up for engages and works very well in a Vayne lane, can provide quite a lot of peel. And we've seen Toaster be absolutely dominant on this Vayne champion. As we said, arguably the best AD carry in the UK right now. On a champion like Vayne, he can do wonders, and a support champion like Alistar can help him get through that rough laning phase, and it works very well into a Sivir. The thing that Toaster's got to be most mindful of is constantly being shoved under tower in the early game. The level of wave clear that Jokerism has in the Sivir is not the same as what Toaster has, so he could struggle a little bit in this early game. But another interesting pick that we're actually going to see is the Diana coming out from Ravano. We also saw this come out from Choke in their game versus the Null last week. This was their second game. Ravano was an absolute monster. I remember him being level 17 to the level 14 of Raynor. He was absolutely insane. Traditionally, he goes for the split push sort of itemization with the Nash's Tooth, and he just looks to be a massive side split push threat that becomes basically impossible to deal with. And having a look at the roster or the composition coming out from FM, it's actually very difficult for them to deal with this potential split push threat. You could put the Sivir in the mid lane, have him shoved out, or have her constantly shoved down with the rest of the minions, and have these two split push threat coming out from Numlocked and Ravano. Go for that 1-3-1 playstyle that I actually think FM's composition could come to struggle with coming into the later stages of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'm very excited for this game is Flaxish on the Mundo. Now, we've seen this once before. Last week, it was the final game between FM and XL, and Flaxish just went on a tear. He just literally ran away with the game, and there was nothing XL could do to stop him. I mean, after all, Mundo goes where he pleases. He's going to be up against Numlocked. Now, Numlocked is well renowned for being one of the best top laners in the UK. Recently went over to the Turkish LCS, has come back after one split. We'll see what he's learned in the Turkish LCS, and we'll see if this Renekton is going to be able to take on Mundo up in that top lane.
One thing in particular I want us to keep our eyes on is last week Numlocked actually had some strange itemization when he played Malphite, and we talked about how he was all about providing utility for his team with that Malphite. We were all like, you know, he's traditionally a carry top laner, he really likes to have an impact in the top lane, but now he's moving more to play for his team. He's trying to be that utility, be that engage for the team, and then you have a look at his build, he's gone double door entering into Abyssal, into a Hex Drinker, and you're sitting there thinking, okay, what are you doing here, Numlock? And he's like, oh, I want damage, I still want to be able to carry for my team. And when he's playing this Renekton, he can do just that. So I want to see how he decides to itemize, whether or not he's going to go for something like the Black Cleaver early in transition into tank, or whether or not he's just going to go, right, I want a bunch of damage, I want to be killing Flaxish all the time, I want to be jumping onto Toaster and being an absolute pain. Can he still get rid of these carry tendencies, or can he play more towards his team coming into this game?
That is going to be one of the questions. Speaking of carries, let's take a look down in this bottom lane. Vayne versus Sivir. Now, this is a matchup that has been seen a lot of times in the last few months. Sort of a little while ago now, Sivir's kind of fallen out of the meta a little bit, but we do still occasionally see it. And Sivir is kind of one of the only AD carries that Vayne typically wins lane against.
Yeah, the thing about it is it's very difficult for a Sivir to trade against a Vayne. Because of the constant the silver bolts available to you, and the fact that it's very easy to dodge out of the boomerangs from Sivir. Traditionally in the 1v1 situation, Vayne does have the advantage, but what Sivir has over Vayne is the ridiculous wave clear available to her. She can constantly shove those waves over and over and over again, and no matter how mechanically gifted Toaster is, he should not be looking to fight against Jokerism when there's 6 minions hitting you in the face. So Toaster's going to be shoved under his tower early, especially when paired with the Alistar. There's going to be very little available for them to do, and I like the fact that Haddo's gone for this Morgana, somewhat of a soft counter to Alistar, because you can just throw the Black Shield down, prevent any real crowd control from coming out from Tundra, and you also have the Spell Shield available for Sivir. So it's going to be very difficult for that bottom lane to lock down Choke's bottom lane, and I think that it will go heavily in their favor. It's just going to be a matter of how well Toaster can farm out during the laning phase. As long as he doesn't fall too far behind, he should be fine, and he should be fairly relevant once he completes those major items. The Blade of the Ruined King, likely going to go for the Static Shiv, and you know, it's definitely going to be the Toaster show this game when there really isn't that much damage coming anywhere else out of FM's composition.
Well, Toaster has had that pressure on his shoulders before, and boy, has he stepped up. So we'll see if he's going to be able to do that once again. One thing I'm interested in is this Diana pick. Now, Ravano consciously picked that up against a Lulu. Now, Lulu isn't typically a champion that anyone's able to kill in lane, generally speaking. What do you think Ravano's game plan is here with the Diana?
Farm. I think the thing about when you're playing against a Lulu, yeah, okay, in the early game, there's quite a lot of lane pressure that Lulu can put down. But the great thing about Diana is she can take that Crescent Moon very early. She can look to just constantly keep herself alive and just constantly shove the wave in as much as possible. Then she can move up, go take herself some raptors, maybe take herself a couple wolves, and with the teleport, it's very easy to stay relatively safe during the laning phase. I don't think that Ravana is going to get punished that hard simply due to having this teleport available to him. He's likely going to start with the flask, or he may go for the Doran's Ring and look for an early back. But either way, I think he's just going to look to farm as much as possible and try to rush that early Abyssal Scepter, be as relevant as possible in the mid game, and be an additional threat that Toaster just has to keep in his eye on.
Well, we'll see if he's going to be able to be that additional threat as we head on to Summoner's Rift for FM Esports up against Choke Gaming. Our fourth game of the day, first game of this second best of three. Two of the UK giants up against each other. And we'll see who's going to be able to take this first game and take the edge in this best of three between these teams. And immediately we see Choke group up and look to find potentially a pick, maybe just a bit of vision in the FM jungle.
It does look like they're trying to get some deep vision down. This is one thing that FM Esports could look to do. Going for that lane swap is a way of making sure that Vayne gets as much free farm as possible. And, you know, we talked about how Jokerism could just constantly shove the Vayne under tower. That's not a great place for Vayne really to be in. So you set up the lane swap, you allow Toaster to get as much free farm as he wants, and that gives them a slightly easier laning phase. So they're just warning out for that. They want to be able to recognize whether or not this lane swap will come out. And as I said, it does actually look like that they're moving around for that lane swap. So smart decision making coming out from FM's bottom lane to make sure that Toaster gets as much farm as he can.
Yeah, absolutely. That is going to be spotted out by the wards once he steps over towards that top lane. But Jokerism and Haddo have well and truly committed to going to this bot lane now. And I feel like they might just be suspecting this lane swap to come out at this stage, as they have walked straight into lane, not opting to go for the Gromp or anything like that early on in this game.
This is super interesting coming out from both sides. Notice how originally Toaster and Tundra were hanging around the center of the lane, and they were like, do we want to go for this lane swap? Is that something that we really want? And they felt as though because they didn't see Jokerism and Haddo go for that Gromp, that the lane swap was going to come out. So they decided to stick to the bottom. They decided to go for what they thought was a 2 versus 1 in their favor. But because of the positioning of Jokerism and Hado going straight through the lane, looking to interrupt their Krug start, they're now able to get a favorable matchup for themselves. So nice decision making coming out from Choke to be able to build up this early advantage and get the start that they're really looking for.
Yeah, and we'll see if this start does come out. Jokerism in the Hado with a decent advantage to kick off this lane. Obviously, they got that early harass down at the Krugs, and now they get the early level 2, and immediately you see Toaster and Tundra just back away. They run to the hills. They do not want to be caught out by a binding when they are a level down. And now we see the wave is going to hit the tower. That should be Toaster picking up a few more CS, but a decent CS lead already starting to build up here in favour of Jokerism, but Toaster doing an excellent job of CSing underneath the tower. That is going to mean that he can sort of level that out again and get everything back to even Stevens.
So right now, pretty standard starts for both teams. There's nothing exciting, I imagine, going to be happening in this early game. You know, most laners going to be just looking to try and get as much harm as possible. The only real aggression we're going to see is from Numlock, and you can already see him putting a bit of damage down onto Flaxish up in the top lane. But, you know, I just want to remind everyone that both these teams are currently sitting at 4-0. That is their record in the ESL Premiership. Neither one has actually lost a series yet. So both of these teams are playing for seeding, and this is a pretty important game because arguably you could debate that these two teams are one of the possibilities that we could see for the actual final. You know, this is what we'd expect because of how renowned these teams actually are within the UK scene, and being able to win this series would be a great start for them coming into the playoffs. Being able to get as many wins on the board as possible, getting that better seeding to increase your likelihood of making it to the actual finals of the playoffs is something that both these teams want. So this is a very important game. I know that both teams have prepared very hard for it because, you know, being able to take a win here could be a big sort of deciding factor coming into the playoffs later on in December.
Yeah, absolutely could. And actually, Ravano taking a huge amount of damage from Ziviz, and this is the early pressure that Lulu offers that you were talking about. Diana, as a champion, doesn't have the strongest pre-6 laning phase. Glitterland's going to come out the slowest there. Ziviz doesn't want to commit to trying to kill right now. He knows that the teleport is there, and there's not that much of an advantage, and it is a big risk to go too aggressive, so it's just going to push that one in.
Of this Pale Cascade really doing Diana a lot of favors, just being able to mitigate a lot of the damage coming out from Ziviz, and he is doing a great job of getting the farm that he needs, and now he's just going to back off, pick himself some items, and then teleport back to lane. This is the, well, annoying thing about teleport, but also the great thing for mid laners in the sense that you see more diversity in the mid lane, because traditionally champions that got punished very hard in the early game aren't as punished as much simply due to the nature of how teleport works. So nice pick up there. Right now Kino needs to be careful though.
Yeah, oh, the tunnel is going to be blocked. Ravano is on the scene, and that is going to be first blood. Honestly, I don't feel like that was necessarily Choke outplaying. That was just Kino making a huge mistake very early in the game there.
I'm not entirely sure what Kino was trying to do there, going for the aggressive steal onto Plex, and Plex, you know, you already talked about how this guy likes to play aggressively. He recognizes that Kino's in his jungle, and he's like, wait a minute, that's my thing, you can't have it, and he gets a beautiful body slam to interrupt Kino as he's trying to take that tunnel to safety, and then Ravano uses the moonfall at just the right time to prevent Kino from being able to flash over the wall into the river and into safety. So first blood going over to Ravano is a great way to start for Choke Gaming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we just mentioned Diana's weaknesses in the laning phase. Getting a first blood is definitely going to make that a little bit easier. Not far off level 6 either, and only 10 CS down. So with a slight gold advantage, just hit level 6 right now, he's going to be feeling very comfortable as they head towards the 7th minute of the game. And honestly, that's a lot earlier of a kill than I was kind of expecting in this game.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Ravano going very aggressive.
Going for something onto Ziviz.
Yeah, it certainly is. Ziviz actually trading this one back relatively well. Plex not level 6, so I don't expect them to be able to get too much here. Ziviz obviously has his flash available, so not going to be able to go for too much, just a little bit of pressure, but then obviously Ziviz trades that one straight back. And this is going to force Ravano to go back to base. Doesn't have his teleport. Ziviz should be able to force this under tower. Maybe get a slight bit more of an CS lead there. Jokerism knocked about a little bit by Tundra, but Hado, well aware that Tundra was looking to do that. He doesn't recall and is going to stay there with his AD carry.
And you can just see how this lane is playing out. Jokerism constantly shoving Toaster under tower, Hano being a pain by dropping those pools to just get a little bit of poke down onto Toaster, and they're just trying to be a nuisance. They're trying to deny Toaster as much farm as possible. Tundra doing what he can to try and freeze the minion wave. He actually does a great job of it, but they need to be careful because Plex has moved into the lane.
Yeah, Toaster needs to be cautious on how far deep he goes. Plex waiting for this one. Tundra going to walk into him. He's not going to have his ultimate available. Heal immediately comes out from Toaster, and that is going to be the disengaged Plex. Not quite able to find the gank that he was looking for there. And
so, great setup there from Plex. Being able to burn the heal that early on is a nice advantage to develop in the bottom lane. And Jokerism and Hano just continuing their pressure, doing what they can to further that CS advantage, and it's just being reciprocated all across the map. Pressure is pretty much the name of the game for Choke, and already in this early game, this is something that I do like to see from them. Coming back to the game, FM versus XL, what we saw is that FM... After talking to Tundra, he said that with this new lineup, he's hoping that their early game would actually be stronger, because traditionally as a team, they prefer to play around the mid to late game. They rely very much on their macro plays, rather than, while they are talented individuals, they're extremely talented team fighters and working together as a team. So what we saw from last week is that when they put under this early pressure, I'm just bringing flashbacks of Maldo in. If they fall behind in the early, they tend to sort of collapse as a team because they can't get to the mid stage where they really do excel as a unit. And Choke are sort of reproducing that situation for them. They're trying to deny them this good early game that they want. They're trying to put the pressure onto them and give themselves a good early game to advance into the mid game for Choke Gaming. So I like this play coming out from Choke.
Yeah, and so far it's really paying off. Almost a 1,000 gold lead at 9 minutes here. Considering how little action has happened, that is a significant lead just from sort of winning out these lanes so far. The CS obviously starting to build up in favour of Ziviz in that mid lane, 91 to 78. But then the first blood gold is going to fully even that one out for these guys. And now potentially these teams could start to look towards Dragon now that we've got the ultimates on the board. Everybody starting to feel a little bit stronger after these first couple of bases. We'll see if either of the teams want to try and initiate some early action.
Could very well look to do that. And it's a bit of a tough one to decide. Really, it should be Choke looking for these early plays rather than FM, because as I said, FM waiting to ramp up, especially with this sort of composition, playing much more towards the mid and late game, waiting for those major items to be completed before they look for any significant fight. Meanwhile, for the side of Choke, they could very well look to set up these Dragon plays. If FM try to respond to them, they're in a favourable position to swing the fight in their favour. It's just going to be a matter of whether or not they decide to do that. Surprisingly, Plex, not as aggressive as we've seen from him in the past, seems to have toned it down just a little bit for this game. And I think, to me, that shows that he's demonstrating a bit more respect towards FM than he has to his other opponents in the past. He's not being super crazy with setting up these ganks. He's mainly focusing on getting some good vision control down, making sure that his team knows where the enemy is. And I think this is very smart play coming out from Plex. Clearly showing that after all of his experience gained from the challenger scene playing in NA, he's been able to utilize that here in NA, and he's really calmed down a lot in terms of his playstyle.
Yeah. Here in NA, he is certainly doing very well. Revenue actually going quite aggressive. Wild Growth forced out from Ziviz there as Kino enters the lane. Plex is going to be here as well. But nothing going to happen in the end. Ultimate's burned, but no kills coming out. Raveno just going to push this wave on out, and Ziv is going to be able to soak up that last minion or two. Hado looking for a binding down bottom, but can't quite find his target. And the CS difference down in this bottom lane is really starting to build up for Jokerism. 20 CS ahead at this early stage of the game. 11.5 minutes in. No dragons, no towers taken so far. And it's all about the CS numbers at this point.
Yeah, it really is. But this is exactly what we expected. This is what I was saying Jokerism would be looking to do. Constantly shove Toaster under tower, makes farming a lot harder. But Raveno really starting to gain the edge in this lane now. He's working towards a bunch of different items by the looks of it. But he is actually going for that very early Nash's Tooth. So he's clearly indicating that I'm going to be going for that split push build this game. I'm going to be looking to be that side pressure threat that someone has to come and deal with. And after that, he's going to transition into an Abyssal Scepter. So clearly demonstrating what he's decided to go for, and now that he has reached that level 9 mark, he's hit a decent power spike and he can trade quite evenly with Ziviz. And he's going to start to turn things up a little bit in the middle lane. So keep an eye out on him and what he's planning to do.
Yeah, Plex now heading up towards this top lane, looking for a gank. On to Flaxish. I can't imagine that they're going to be able to grab much here. Obviously, Flaxish is playing Mundo. I mean, they're going to look for it. The stun lands. There's the knock up and the knock back as well. Flaxish actually knocked way out of position. He is going to use his ultimate, but look at the damage out of Numlocked. What was that? Just obliterates his health bar, forces me to eat my words. And really nice gank from Plex. The ultimate was really key there as Toaster going to use Final Hour down in this bottom lane. Gets a couple of shots onto Haddo, but they can't quite finish anybody off. Both AD carries using their ultimates there and then immediately disengaging.
What a pretty crazy action going all across the map. Plex finally setting up for another gank in the top lane. As you rightly said, I didn't expect Flaxish to actually fall down right there, especially with the amount of armor available to him. But Numlocked, his damage on Renekton somewhat surpasses more than we were expecting, and they were able to drop him extremely quickly. I feel as though a large part of that is due to Plex and Numlocked being able to get a lot of damage down onto Flaxish before his ultimate could really have a significant impact. And because it wasn't really able to kick off and give him a lot of health back, they were able to shut him down very quickly. He didn't use his flash or his teleport, so he's not going to be down on summoner spells. If another gank does come out, the same trick might not work. But still, nice pickup for Choke again, getting this early lead that they really need against FM.
They certainly do, and honestly, right now, feels like Choke making sure that FM cannot free Flaxish. They're looking to keep him cooped up. Tundra going for the aggression here onto Haddo. Gets a double Soul Shackles, but it isn't going to land any stuns. Toaster is going to get caught up by the binding, though, and with the Ignite and the auto attacks, Jokerism is going to pick up that kill. Tundra managing to get away from the explosive cask, and it is going to make it 3-0 in favor of Choke.
You have to give credit for a beautiful play there by Haddo. He got knocked into the wall. It looked like he was about to die. Things were not looking good for him. But then he walks up to Toaster and he makes sure that he lands that binding to give plenty of time for Plex to be like, alright, guys, I'm going to join the fight. I'm going to help you out. He flashes in, slams his barrel down onto the head of Toaster, and they're able to give the kill over to Jokerism. Right now, though, Plex needs to be careful in the middle lane because Kino is hanging around, and you know, this is what I want to identify about the difference between these two junglers. Kino just seems to be so passive. And while I'd like to say he concentrates a lot more on vision control, he just doesn't. He seems to do very little in these early game. He seems to be very mid-game orientated, which may support the whole playstyle that FM likes to run. But in reality, it's just meaning that they fall incredibly far behind in the early game because Kino just doesn't offer the same sort of protection.
Zivis forced to use his wild growth there in the mid lane. He's going to be able to survive the burst in the end because of that ultimate, but Ravano didn't really use all too much. He didn't really expend any resources on that. You can just go for an all-in like that, and the ultimate only has a 20-second cooldown anyway for Ravano, so he's put himself in a pretty favourable position now with that opportunity still available to him, and he is going to go in. Zivis already down to half HP. One more combo should finish him off. The flash comes out from Ravano, but a beautiful polymorph keeps Zivis alive for just a little bit longer, and now Kino is looking to capitalise. That's Zivis picking up a kill in the mid lane. Outsmarted and baited right there by Zivis. Kino comes into the rescue, and they pick up a kill.
Zivis with the clutch whimsy just at the right time to prevent Ravano from actually getting that kill. Super well played by him. I was saying that seeing as we haven't seen him for quite a long time, I feel as though that his performance has fallen a bit, but you got to give credit to him right there. That was a beautiful outplay onto Ravano, but plenty of time for Kino to actually rejoin the fight and pick themselves up a kill. Very smart play, very well played from Zivis and Kino, and they've now got their first kill on the board.
They certainly do, and now Plex is looking to answer for that as he heads towards the top lane, deciding that this dive is not something he wants to go for right now. He's going to get spotted out by Flaxish. He's going to throw out a cheeky cleaver, but does not want to commit to trying to take on Plex right now. The ward is going to be denied, but another cleaver comes on out, and now the teleport is going to come out as Haddo is dropped down in that bottom lane. Final hour, adding to the AD and forcing the kill out there. Really nice play by FM, turning it into a 2 for 3 overall so far, and closing that gold gap to just 400 gold. Now that they're heading towards this tower, they might just be able to take something, but Plex is incredibly low. Flaxish is going to find a kill in the 2v1. It is going to get traded straight back across by Numlock, though. And in the meantime, Ravano is diving Zivis. There is action all over the map, and now Zivis forced to use the wild growth, but Ravano is not finished just yet. He is going to have to back away a little bit. He's waiting for the Crescent Strike. The flash comes out from Zivis, who's looking to try and turn this one around. But Ravano, his ult is still not on cooldown, but the Polymorph comes through. And it is going to be Zivis just outplaying Ravano once again. Zivis doing a phenomenal job on that Lulu.
I've always felt like Ravano on this Diana should have had the advantage in the 1 versus 1, but Ziv is just utilizing his abilities at just the right time to avoid all of the damage coming out from Ravano. He's played that so beautifully well. I could see what Ravano was trying to do right at the end there. He so very nearly he held on to his Lunar Rush for such a long time because he wanted to get the kill onto Zivis. He wanted to make sure he could go Lunar Rush, auto Lunar Rush to completely execute Zivis and prevent him with a chance. But because the shield lasted so long into Zivis, and because of how large the shield actually is, with Zivis now being level 13, level 12 at the time, Ravano just couldn't go for it. He knew if he turned around and went for the overcommit, the shield would have been enough to keep Zivis alive, and so he hesitated. He felt like there was nothing he could do, and that was just a straight up beautiful outplay from Zivis. Gotta give credit to this guy because he is on form this game, and they've actually managed to equalize the score to 4-4.
Yeah, honestly, I don't feel like I've ever seen Zivis have a bad game yet. I've cast this guy a lot of times, and he's got an exceptional Z, but then you see him on these more passive champions and he's still able to do ridiculous things. And showing that in this game as well. He seems to be kind of the building block that a lot of FM's play comes from, but now we see everybody rotating up to the top lane. Not quite able to take the tower though. They are just going to have to back away down towards the rest of the map as Flaxish starting to push up towards a tier 2 here, going to deny some CS and then start to head towards the jungle to take these camps away.
The thing is, for Ravano at this point, I feel that he can calm down just a little bit. He didn't need to make all those aggressive plays onto Zivis. He could have just now set up for his split push. He's got the items completed. Right now, though, he's looking to get his own blue buff, but Tundra doing a great job of denying that from him. Just knocking him around, being like, no, this is our blue buff now. And Flaxish, seeing as he doesn't have any mana, he feels as though, I want to see what it's like to have some mana, so he's going to pick himself up that blue buff and be pretty content with that pickup. But right now, the game is somewhat going the way that FM want it. Ravano isn't running away with the game with his early aggression. Yeah, okay, a lot of early ganks came out in favor of Choke, but FM have responded very well. They've used their teleports to capitalize onto Haddo being a little bit out of position in the bottom lane. They've relieved some of the pressure that was being put onto Toaster. And yeah, okay, Flaxish has fallen behind with some of the ganks that have come out, but he's playing Mundo. Who cares? He's managed to complete some of his major items. He's still going to be very difficult to deal with. He's just going to sit on top of Jokerism or Ravano in the late game and just keep mashing in their face and just be a massive nuisance. And okay, he could go 0-4, but he could still do that because it's Mundo, and Mundo goes where he pleases. So right now, game's going exactly the way FM wants it, and if Choke don't do something to try and capitalize on the small lead that they have right now, FM could look to close this game out.
Yeah, Mundo goes where he pleases, even if that is the bottom of the scoreboard. He is not too fussed on that one. And honestly, I feel like right now for Choke, the important thing is that Numlocked is still doing phenomenally well. 2 kills already, ahead in CS as well. And on that Renekton, I mean, Renekton is a champion that can definitely carry a game, especially when we start to see the skirmishers come out. If he can manage to find a good sort of group of people to get that damage out on, and make no mistake, Renekton definitely does a lot of damage. If he can find the targets for that, if he can get into those fights, get those crucial stuns, he is going to be absolutely tremendously hard to deal with for FM.
And look at this build coming out from Numlocked. We talked about in the early game how this guy likes to be the carry. I wondered whether or not he was going to go for that more team fight based build style where he goes for the... Oh, hang on, because it looks like a dragon fight's kicking off.
It might just be as Tundra forced to use that Unbreakable Will already. Nocturnal Plex knocked all around the shop, and he is going to go down. Traded 1-for-1 though as Tundra falls. Now Toaster trying to be focused down, but the Wild Growth is going to keep him alive. But look at this, Numlocked has arrived on the scene. Zivis is about to fall, but he shields himself at the last second, and now suddenly Numlocked's the last man alive. There's nothing he can do in this one. Toaster and Zivis, I was going to say both escape, but Ziv is taken down in their last last split second there. Numlocked trying to do what he can, but just not quite enough as they trade 2 kills for a clean ace.
That was a very late teleport coming out from Numlocked, and that is a very large reason as to why the fight went so heavily in FM's favour. All of the focus actually went down onto Tundra, and he was the first one to drop. That is not the target that Ravno needs to be getting onto. Plex managed to get a beautiful engage onto Toaster. That forces the flash out of him very, very early, but he's still in a very vulnerable position to be capitalised on. But there was no one to capitalise on top of it. Ravno went onto Tundra. Numlocked with the late teleport couldn't get on top of him either. And by the time Numlocked had rejoined the fight, he had no team left. And the kiting potential coming out from Ziviz and Toaster was just too much to be able to drop down onto him. Meanwhile, Flaxish, as I said, just being that slap man, sitting in the middle of the fight, hitting onto anyone that he could. And they come out ahead in that fight, now swinging the gold in their favour. And this is exactly what I was saying about FM. This is now the point at which the game turns in their favour. Some major items have been completed, and after winning that fight, they are in a fantastic position. Things can only go uphill for them now, unless the rest of Choke can somehow get a miracle fight coming up in the future.
Yeah, they're going to need to, and I mean, we were talking about how Numlocked was ahead in lane against Flaxish. He's suddenly found himself 4 kills, and I mean, obviously he is still slightly behind in CS, but with those assists, he is going to be sitting pretty, just 100 gold down against Numlocked right now. You mentioned it doesn't matter if Mundo's ahead in the early game, and Flaxish just fully proved that in this fight. And now with that advantage, he's managed to find himself, Numlocked being very sneaky in the top lane combo. Going to be locked up by that Morgana binding as Numlocked is getting chunked on down. The true damage is going to come through from Toaster, and the crocodile bites the dust now as Flaxish pushing up very aggressively. Doesn't have his ultimate available, but it just doesn't seem to matter. Burning Agony ticking away as the knockups come through. Ravno going to be their next target. Tries to get onto Ziviz, but there's nothing he can do. This is going to be a top lane tower if they choose to go for it. They might even go for Baron.
Ravno is just not having the game. I talked about last week when they played versus the Nord that he didn't really do anything to impress me. He was just a fairly staple mid laner, and I can see now that he likes to be aggressive. I feel like he disrespected Ziviz just a little bit, and he felt like that because the trades are so close he could come out ahead, but now because of how far behind he is, he's just not impacting the team whatsoever, and right there you could just see how little impact he actually had in these team fights. Off the back of that team fight, FM are going to pick themselves up a Baron, and now it's just reached a point where Toaster's unkillable. You will not get to him ever. The peel coming out from Tundra, the protection coming out from Ziviz, as well as the front line of Kino and Flaxish, is just making him an impossible AD carry to deal with. And right now, I just think that Flaxish might go down, but he is Mundo.
Yeah, he certainly is, and he is going to try and kite around the tele. Look at Jokerism's health! Oh my goodness, the damage out of Flaxish right there. Nearly able to burst down the Sivir. Does finally go down in the end. Teleport was channeled there by Ziviz as well. Was going to go up and try and help out, but was a little bit too late. And Choke do manage to find themselves a pick. Now, obviously FM are starting to find themselves a lead, but I don't think we should get too carried away just yet. They are still 3,000 gold ahead, so there is definitely space for Choke to find a foothold in this game, to crawl their way back in. But the question is, who is going to be that one that steps up and takes them back into this game?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? The problem for Jokerism is he's not a champion. Jokerism's not a champion. That's true. He's not a champion.
You're right. You're completely correct.
Playing Sivir is not really designed to deal with a champion like Mundo. He just doesn't have the DPS. He doesn't have the toolkit available to be able to dismantle the machine that is Flaxish right now. And throughout this game, you notice how he's actually decided to go for this Titanic Hydra. With the recent changes to Mundo, he now has that reset on his masochism, and it does a lot more damage. So when you build something like the Titanic Hydra that supports those tanks, you know, these juggernauts that you often see, it's just very difficult to deal with. So he can just keep slapping on Jokerism's face. There's absolutely nothing that he can do to deal with it, and it's just going to be a matter of, if Numlocked and Plex can take out Toaster, followed up with Ravno, then great, Toaster goes down, and as long as Jokerism can survive long enough, they can turn the fight around to help then Jokerism out later on in the game. But it's got to a point where Numlocked, Ravno, and Plex cannot get onto Toaster because of the amount of peel he has, and they can't fight off Flaxish because, okay, if you decide to focus Flaxish, you also have Ziviz keeping him alive. And it's simply a matter of the early game was good for Choke. The early game was going very heavily in their favor. It's exactly the way that they like to play. Nocturnal Plex, sticking to what he knows, and that's this very calculated, very smart aggression, setting up the ganks where he needs to, but they just weren't able to maximize that. The game kind of lulled. They were sitting at 1 and 4 in kills, and they just weren't quite able to do that. They just kind of kept on going with what they were doing, and they felt like it would work out, but then FM were like, right, let's make a play, let's do something. They set up a great teleport play down in the bottom. Flaxitch gets himself a solo kill in the top lane in a 2 versus 1 scenario, and the game just sort of swung back in FM's favor. And once they picked up a few kills, they went for a favorable team fight, and now they're in full control of the game. And I just feel as though that Choke don't have a composition to deal with it. They had an early game comp. It's very similar to what we saw with XL versus Null. XL's composition needed to do well in the early game because they were going to get outscaled, and the same thing is happening here for Choke. They've just been outscaled, and it's now just going to get worse and worse as game goes on, especially now that FM have the Baron.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Baron has been a crucial factor in all of our games today. One thing I really want to touch on right here is take a look at the items for the AD carries right now. You've got Jokerism on the side of Choke. He's got an Infinity Edge, he's got his Static Shiv, and he's got his Berserker Greaves. And that's kind of all he's got going for him right now. You take a look at the other side. You've got the sort of first 2 items to match up with the Shiv and the IE. You've got the Blade of the Rune King and the Phantom Dancer. You've got the boots. But then on top of that, he's already gone for a QSS. Very, very early defensive item coming out from him.
So it does look like that we're actually going to take quite an extended pause, as one of the players does appear to be dealing with some serious connectivity issues. So and we're going to talk for a little bit about that, but we have to remember that this game is a best of 3 series, so even if either team falls behind, it's okay. They can change up their strategy, and we saw that in the Null versus XL game. Every single game, the teams are bringing out different ideas, different champions, different strategies that really made it work for them, and we saw different playstyles every single game. And when you're looking at these top UK teams, I imagine they're going to do the same things again. I can't see Choke running exactly the same composition because they're going to be on the blue side. It's now their turn to pick a composition that they want to run, and it's going to be up to FM whether or not they decide to react to that or whether or not they decide to build their own composition that they're happy with. There's so much adaptation available in these best of 3 series, and you know, we can't iterate enough how important this series is for both the teams. They're playing for seedings. Neither team has actually lost a series yet in the ESL Premiership, both sitting at 4-0. They need the wins. They want to be top of the group coming into the playoffs happening in December, and a win right here would put them in a good position to aim for that.
It really would, and it's all about that number 1 seed. If you can be the one to take on seed 4 in the semi-finals, you almost, well, in theory, you guarantee yourself a spot in those finals, and the grand finals are what everybody is playing for right now. Get their hands on a slice of that prize pool. We'll see who is going to be our finalists. I mean, you mentioned earlier that you think both FM and Choke have a good shot at making the finals. I definitely think Infused are not a team that is to be sniffed at. They've been looking incredibly dominant in recent games, and they definitely could be looking to be a favourite potentially heading towards the finals. But we will have to see as we head towards playoffs. We are going to head into a short break while we just make sure that the players can all get onto the Rift and fix a couple of technical issues that any players might be having. But we will be back in just a few minutes to continue this game. Don't go anywhere. How wrong I was, ladies and gentlemen. We are back in game already, and it has been Zivis picking up a kill onto Ravano to kick the game back off again. And we'll see if FM Esports can pick themselves up anything off of that. I expected the pause to go on a little bit longer by what players were saying, but we are immediately back into this matchup, and we see FM starting to siege down onto this middle lane tier 2.
Yeah, I don't know what Ravano was trying to do there. I think he wanted his blue buff and ended up overcommitting for it. Didn't realize that he was in a 2 versus 1 scenario. Ended up losing his life, which means that there's going to be even one less source of wave clear available to the side of Choke. We have to recognize that the siege potential isn't actually very strong from FM Esports. They have that Vayne, who's a very low range AD carry. Has to get very close to the tower if she wants to hit it, but with this Baron buff, it makes sieging all the more easier. So they're going to pick up that second tier 2 tower of the game. And right now, FM Esports looking in a great position to potentially take the first inhibitor of the game.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of the new, I say new Baron buff, it's been there for quite a while, but Plex is starting the fight. Ziv is going to be focused down, forced to use his wild growth on himself, and he's going to go down. Ravano finishes him off, and he's looking for Toaster as well. Numlock jumps forward, and look at this team fight coming out from Choke. That's going to be yet another kill. Tundra trying to escape, but he's not going to be able to. Flaxish now, the last man alive, and he will be taken down. The double kill comes through for Plex, and it is a 5-for-0 ace out of Choke. We thought that they were so far behind, and they just suddenly pull out the perfect team fight.
Is me sitting there saying, oh, there's absolutely nothing that Choke can do to come back into this game, but they do it. They find the opening and they decide to focus Ziviz down. They decide that, okay, if he's providing on this utility for his team, let's just kill him. So they do. They catch him out of position underneath the tower. A beautiful binding lands from the Haddo, and they shut him down immediately. I was talking about how FM have quite a weak siege composition. They have to get very close to the tower if they want to take that one away, and you saw it being punished right there. The binding lands, they capitalize, they kill Ziviz, and with Ziviz out the way, it's easy to shut Toaster down. I think Tundra made a bit of a misplay going for the aggressive play. He went onto the backline to help out Kino and Flaxish rather than providing any peel for Toaster. That left him completely on his own to the hands of Numlock and Ravano. Those two just immediately dropped on top of his face. He went down, and once those two targets were down, it was just very easy cleanup for Choke. 5-for-0, they get a tier 2 tower themselves in the middle lane, they get themselves a dragon, and this game is already back to what could be a very close series.
It definitely could, and this is what I love about watching these top 4 teams. The series always seem to be incredibly close between these guys, and now we see FM trying to wrestle vision control off of Choke in this topside jungle. That is going to be smited away by Plex in the end, as we see Combo, or Kino, trying to... I keep calling him Combo instead of Kino, I'm not sure why.
Because he's been casting Icy all day, and he's at the end of his word.
Yeah, I guess, maybe. But either way, they are going to start to siege up in this top lane, but this time they don't have a Baron buff to work with, and against a Sivir and a Diana, it is going to be pretty difficult.
It surprises me that they're continuing the siege after that misplay that just happened. You can already recognize that it's actually very difficult for them to set up a siege, but I guess they decided that there's actually very few other objectives that they can go for. The Dragon's been taken, the Baron's unavailable, there are no tier 1 towers that are really easy to take, and that's the last tier 2 tower that Choke have available to them. So they decided to just shove the wave under tower, try and put a bit of extra pressure down while they get some deep vision down in Choke's half of the jungle. Meanwhile, Jokerism takes a huge chunk of damage from Civiz, and this guy really has been one of the main reasons that FM have excelled so far in this game. He's been the massive facilitator, and I really wanted to give him his praises as they were sieging at mid lane, but then he's the one that gets caught out. Yeah. He's the one that ends up eating that binding and ends up resulting in them losing the fight. So hopefully he won't fall for the same trick twice. They should be able to collect themselves, and they should still be able to come out ahead in these fights if they execute them properly. One of the biggest problems for a Renekton is getting on top of your AD carry, and a champion like a Vayne that already has all this peel available to him with his ridiculous mobility is further supported by that of a Lulu and a Alistar. So FM should have the stronger composition, especially in the late game. It's just a matter of playing their team fights properly and making sure that they don't completely abandon their AD carry.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love this kind of assassin Lulu build that is coming out from Ziviz right now. He's already got a Death Cap, he's got a Luden's Echo and a Morella Nomicon, as well as his Sorcerer's Boots. He is well on his way towards full build, and the damage he does, I mean, you saw it a minute ago onto Jokerism. It is insanely high, and with the Baron about to spawn in just 35 seconds, this kind of power spike that he's recently hit by finishing the Death Cap, finishing the Luden's Echo and the Morello, he's going to be pretty terrifying, and the amount of health and shielding that he can do as a champion is going to be so difficult to deal with for Choke.
It really will be, and what I find interesting about this itemization coming out from Ziv is you could go for a Void Staff third item here, but he's decided that he just wants as much flat ability power as possible, so that the utility that he provides is even more. The shield is bigger on his E. He also has the ultimate provides more health for whichever target he decides to put that on top of, and the fact that he has decided to go for this just tells me that he's more about playing for his team rather than looking to really do damage. But obviously, when you do have those items, you still do quite a lot of damage.
You do indeed. And as well, you get the extra bonus movement speed on Whimsy. It does scale with AP. So a lot of advantages to just going for flat ability power on that Lulu. Ravano trying to find an opportunity to jump onto Zivis, but not really managing to get that situation to fall in his favour there. And I'm not just going to be here up in the top lane trying to deal with the minion wave that Flaxish has been pushing up towards this tower, and with the Titanic Hydra, or the other Hydra, he's going to be able to do that. Titanic Hydra is the one, of course, that Flaxish has.
Hydra A and Hydra B.
Yeah.
Right now, though.
Well,
Kino.
Hydra is meant to have many heads. Well, here we go. Kino going to be knocked back by the explosive cask of Nocturnal Plex, but not quite able to land that exactly where he needed to, so that is going to be on cooldown for just a little bit. Ravano going to be able to dodge away from the Glitter Lance, and both teams are just going to kind of back away again a little bit. Obviously, FM picking up a slight advantage with the Greg Assault down, but I don't think it's enough of an edge to warrant just starting the Baron.
The main thing right now for FM in particular is that they know they have weak siege. They need to get this Baron if they want to be able to crack the base of Choke. So what they're doing is they're posturing around, they're getting deep vision down into Choke's jungle. They want to know where they are, and the moment they're caught out of position, they're going to go for it. They have a very fast Baron take, and once they get that, they can look to start setting up another siege and try and break the base. But Choke also recognize this. They're constantly hanging around looking to get vision down as Tundra goes for an engage.
He does indeed. Tundra is taking a whole lot of damage though. Soul Shackles is going to come out. It's only onto 2 tanky members though. Plex getting chunked out here. Toaster is on the back line doing as much damage as he wants. Hado getting incredibly low, has to flash away as well. Numlock jumps forward and picks up 1 kill. He picks up a second for himself as well, and it's all starting to fall apart for FM. Joker isn't flashing over the wall. He wants more, but they're going to have to settle for the 3-for-1 trade that they just managed to find themselves, and now they posture towards this Baron.
Nocturnal Plex was the decider in that fight. You have to... He was so low. He was targeted by Toaster. Toaster was just chunking his health out ridiculously quickly. Then all of a sudden he turns around and he gets a beautiful explosive cast that completely splits FM up. And that means for the rest of Choke, they can just pick the targets that they want, focus them down, and come out ahead. Ziviz would basically put it to the back of the red spawn, and there was no way for him to do anything. Flaxish did what he could to try and support him, but Flaxish doesn't do a great job of providing peel. He's just someone that's very annoying to get off your face. So Ziviz ends up dropping. Meanwhile, Tundris and Kino are split off into the top half of the jungle. They can't really do anything, while Toaster's sitting on the backline just hitting whoever he can. He is able to bring down Ravano, but still, the fact that Toaster was largely denied having a massive impact in that fight was absolutely massive for Choke. Big credit for Plex in that fight for knowing exactly when to use that explosive cast to really turn that fight in their favor. This guy has had a fantastic performance in this game, and ever since returning to Choke, he's been doing a great job. I'm very impressed with his performance so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing how well he does in the rest of this series.
Yeah, for sure, and we'll see if he can keep it up. I mean, I've talked about Plex before. He is an incredibly strong jungler, and he's starting to get incredibly tanky in this game as well. Take a look at the build coming out from Numlocked. Very, very aggressive Renekton build, but because of the sort of hybrid items that he's building, he's still getting pretty damn tanky himself. And actually, Tundra going to get caught up by Dark Binding, and they're going to pull the trigger. They're going to engage on this fight. But look at the damage from that Glitter Lance. Zivis on his own just completely denies the engage from Choke.
This right here, you know, I want to address this build that you mentioned from Numlock. It just comes back to what we were saying earlier. Numlock likes to be a carry. He likes to do damage. He really enjoys getting those kills and going for this itemization. He just wants to be aggressive. It's not a traditional Renekton build that you do see often. Yeah, the Titanic Hydra and Black Cleaver are fairly common, but traditionally you would go full tank after that. Right now, the Jokerism...
Oh, Tundra with the play knocks Jokerism right into the Baron pit. That should just about secure this Baron. Choke Gaming could be in a little bit of trouble as Toaster trying to do what he can. Numlock jumping to try and get onto this Vayne, but he's not going to be able to. Or is he? Toaster gets caught up by the Wild Growth, and that is going to be Choke Gaming dropping like flies now. The Baron isn't taken, but it's a double kill for Ravano. Zhonya's comes on through, but now he's in all kinds of trouble. Toaster trying to escape. Ravano looking to finish off the AD carry, but he can't quite find his target. And it is going to be a 4-for-2 in favour of FM. This game is so back and forth, and now Hado is all on his own trying to deny this Baron, but it is going to be a tall order. Maybe he could get a miracle binding steal, but I don't think that's going to be doable.
We'll have to see whether or not he can get the steal. He's going to go for it.
Yeah, doesn't quite manage to land that one. It is going to go over to Kino Combo, and that is going to be not only the team fight, but also the Baron for FM Esports. Now 4,000 gold ahead of their Choke Gaming counterparts. And we'll see if they can finally turn this into something more. Now that they've got the Baron, this might be their opportunity to try and crack these inhibitors.
Tundra playing the hidden cow is the deadliest right there. Being able to flash, pulverize onto Jokerism and knock him straight into the Baron pit was a huge swing in favor of FM. That was a ridiculous play coming out from Tundra. Something that I wasn't really expecting at all. And by the looks of it, Jokerism wasn't either. He had no summoner spells available to him. And the fact that he was down meant that there was no way that Choke could look to contest the Baron. But FM made a smart decision not even going for it. They didn't want to risk Plex being able to steal it, so they just immediately engaged onto him. They recognized that Choke were a little bit split up because Plex was looking for the steal, whereas the rest of Choke were looking to try and do as much damage to the rest of FM as possible. So they tried to tunnel onto Plex. They managed to bring him down, as well as bring Numlock down. Ravano being somewhat of the saving grace, but he just didn't quite have his abilities up in time to be able to get any return kills. Right now, though, he has found Flaxish.
He has indeed. Flaxish is going to be in a bit of trouble. The teleport going to come through from Zivis, though, is going to mean that Mundo is going to survive. And now Numlocked in a 2 versus 1. Look at the damage coming out onto that crazy crocodile. The slow comes out from the cleaver. That's going to be Zivis. Picks helping on out as they pick up the kill. And now, in the meantime, you see FM sieging up in this top lane 3 versus 3. They don't have an advantage, but it's actually going to be on the hunt used. Tundra right on this front line. He's going to pop his ultimate to try and survive, but I think he's pretty much given up on life at this point. Was just standing still there. Does get the knock up. He's going to knock Jokerism back. Incredibly low though already. Binding is not quite going to land onto Toaster. And that is going to be a 1-for-0. But all of this time while Choke were trying to pull the trigger, look at what Flaxish is doing with Zivis right now. They're onto their Nexus turrets. There is no way that Choke can base in time, and it is going to be game. FM Esports, after a 39-minute slugfest, finally take game 1.
Very back and forth between these two teams, but it was Tundra that made the play that won FN the game. It was looking so close, so back and forth, and I was talking about how Tundra needed to provide more peel for Toaster in these upcoming team fights rather than being that engaged. This was the biggest problem that the side of FM actually had, be that Tundra was really their only form of starting a fight. He was the only one that could really go, right, I want to fight now, I want to kick things off. He would jump in, but that would leave Toaster unavailable. And if he was anywhere away from Zivis, then he had absolutely no peel, and it was very easy for Ravano and Lumlock to shut him down. And without Toaster being in the fight, they pretty much had no damage to win. But with Tundra making that aggressive play onto Jokerism, they heavily swung the game in their favor, being able to come out ahead in a team fight, as well as pick up the Baron, and then slowly look to close this game out. That was a beautifully well played from FM. Really shows you how they are very good at these macro level decision makes coming into the mid and late stages of the game. Very smart play. They're going to bring this series 1-0, and we'll see if things change up coming into game 2.
We will have to see. We are going to head into a short break, but do not go anywhere because, I mean, every single game so far today has been gripping. I've been on the edge of my seat, and I don't expect game 2 of this best of 3 to be any different. We'll be back in just a few.